So following the firing of Jeff Sessions, Gabriel Sherman of Vanity Fair went to go talk to some of the insiders inside the White House to get the general feeling of how President Trump and the people around him are feeling, right? So, how they feel about Sessions and Matt Whitaker, who was apparently Sessions' replacement. Now, and of course, the question they asked, Gabriel Sherman asked, is why? Why did they get rid of Sessions in the first place? Well, I think we already know this, but let's go to their own words. Apparently, Gabriel Sherman's source says, quote, he hated Sessions. It all goes back to the recusal. Now, that's funny. Jeff Sessions was Donald Trump's first supporter back when it was risky to support Donald Trump at all. He came out there and says, oh boy, Howdy, you are saying the exact right things that I want to hear about immigration and about everything else. I will support you, President Trump. First guy, right? So he was a Trump fan. And yet, because of that original sin, recusing himself from the Russia investigation, Sessions was absolutely hated, despite the fact that he's been incredibly loyal on policy grounds. That said, getting rid of Sessions and putting in a replacement, that replacement is actually slated to be far worse on those very same issues and on something actually incredibly important. And that, of course, is the Russia investigation. Now, Sessions' replacement, writes Sherman, acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, is a conservative right out of central casting. Quote, Trump loves the guy. He's like 6'4" and played tight end for Iowa's Rose Bowl team. Before he joined the administration, Whitaker, who will assume authority over the Mueller probe from Rod Rosenstein, wrote an article saying that if the special counsel investigated Trump's finances, it would represent a red line, and has suggested that one way to curtail the investigation without firing Mueller would be to starve it of funds. So already, here we go, we have pretty much the reason that Matt Whitaker was chosen over anyone else. In fact, Sherman writes, Trump's move against Sessions yesterday arrives at a moment when Trump allies are increasingly concerned about Donald Trump's legal exposure. Donald Trump Jr.'s legal exposure. Now, look, I had a story a couple of days ago where Donald Trump Jr. himself is like, I am going to get indicted. I feel like it's going to happen, and it's going to happen after the midterms. So what did Trump do? Immediately, right after the midterm election, doesn't wait a couple of weeks, says, okay, Sessions, you're out. Whitaker, you're in. Okay, so take that spot, and now you're going to do what I tell you to in something that you've telegraphed to everybody all along, and that is shut down the Mueller investigation. And that's what that is, right? Now back to Don Jr. John Jr., according to three sources, has been telling friends he's worried about being indicted as early as this week. Well, tick tock, only got a couple of days left. One person close to Don Jr. speculated that Mueller could indict him for making false statements to Congress and the FBI about whether he told his father about the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting that he used to attempt to get dirt on Russians to get dirt from the Russians on Hillary Clinton. Now, the source had heard that the case could revolve around Trump's former deputy campaign chairman, Rick Gates. Now, Rick Gates worked for Manafort. Rick Gates is cooperating with Mueller, and he was deeply involved in the campaign at the time of the meeting. Now, Trump, this person continued, is, quote, very upset about the risks that Don Jr. faces, and then added, the president is very depressed. Very, very depressed. So that is the general mood. You've got Don Jr. worrying about being indicted for being an idiot. And then you have Donald Trump himself very depressed about this. And so he's like, look, I'm going to do everything that I can to protect our asses. And that means basically setting up a constitutional crisis. Now, not only is Trump depressed about that, but he's also upset about the Democrats taking the House, which is funny because he endorsed Nancy Pelosi. But there was a reason for that. Right after that endorsement of Nancy Pelosi, you had Nancy take impeachment off the table. You had Nancy talking about, oh, let's do bipartisanship. Let's open up a vast bipartisan marketplace of ideas with Trump. Not good, right? So maybe he's feeling a little bit better now. But there is a reason that he does these things. Now, what are some of the Republicans inside the White House or close to the White House? Some of Gabriel Sherman's sources. What are they saying about this? Well, apparently, about the House being taken over by Democrats, Trump is thinking about it two ways. Number one, and this is in regards to some of the investigations that Democrats might actually think about doing. Number one, they said, what could they release about me? And number two, how does it work politically for me? Well, now that's fascinating. So any investigation that might come as a result of Democrats having the House, Trump's already thinking about how can I twist that to my advantage and make it seem like I'm a victim of a Democrat witch hunt, etc. Now he's really, really good at playing the victim. So not only that, but inside the White House, Sherman notes, there is a debate about how to deal with Democrats controlling the House. Some advisors fear the White House is not set up to defend itself against the onslaught of hearings. In fact, a former West Wing official had said, quote, I'll be very concerned about the House investigations. And one Republican close to the president told Sherman, quote, I think everyone is worried. Everyone except for Donald Trump. Now, is Trump worried about the investigations themselves? Well, I just told you. He's trying to figure out how to use those investigations to his advantage. So is he necessarily worried about them? No, I don't think so. Not as much anyway as he's worried about Don Jr. and as worried about the, of course, Mueller probe. Now, that means, of course, since he's worried, he has taken steps. So what steps is Whitaker going to take? Well, I think we already know. He's going to find some way to shut down the Mueller investigation. Now, will he do it outright? Or will he do it by starving it of resources and funds? I don't know. That's something we're going to have to sit around and wait to figure out and really see what happens. But it is going to be interesting how this firing of Sessions plays out in relation to the Mueller investigation, especially since there are some reports where Mueller's ready to start delivering indictments. So now the other thing about that, though, is once that report is done, and other reports are saying that it is done, guess who he hands it off to? He hands it off to Whitaker. That is now Mueller's boss. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen about this. We're going to have to see about if this touches off a constitutional crisis. If it all comes down to what's actually in the report. And if it's as damning as some people think, well, then there could be a problem. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.